Over 70% of our hogs are exported. If we lose an export market, it causes disaster in the price. So this is fabulous. It's fabulous news.
Everybody will be celebrating tonight, I'm sure. Yeah, wonderful.
Tons of American beef are now sitting in cold storage with no buyers while on supermarket shelves. The price per pound keeps creeping up. So what happened? How did Asia turn its back on U.S. beef in just a few weeks, clearing the way for Canada to step in? And why are American shoppers paying more even as farmers are taking heavy losses? In 2025, American beef is quietly being pushed off the menu across Asia, especially in key markets like Japan and South Korea, which together accounted for nearly 60% of total U.S. beef exports last year. According to the USDA, exports to China and Hong Kong are down a staggering 67.7% year-over-year. Japan and South Korea have also scaled back orders significantly. In March alone, weekly beef exports to Asia dropped to just over 50 tons, the lowest in years. While the U.S. scrambles, Canada is moving quickly to fill the gap. With a more modern logistics system, upgraded cold storage facilities, and strong source tracking policies, Canadian beef is emerging as a preferred alternative. Campaigns like Raised Without Hormones and No Antibiotics ever line up with increasingly strict standards in Asia, especially in Japan and South Korea, where food safety and transparency are major selling points. For American shoppers, this global shift hits close to home. As international sales dry up, U.S. meat processors face tighter margins and less room to absorb costs. Meanwhile, more Canadian beef is coming into American supermarkets at a higher price. That box of steaks that used to cost $40, it might now be $46 and climbing. Over the past 5 years, Canada has quietly poured hundreds of millions into upgrading its beef supply chain from ranch to retail. Ports like Vancouver and Prince Rupert have been expanded to handle frozen goods more efficiently. Cold storage hubs in Alberta and Saskatchewan now feature precision temperature systems to protect quality during global shipping. Canada Beef, the industry's marketing arm, rolled out a traceability program allowing each cut of meat to be traced back to its farm. Labels like Raised Without Hormones are now common on export packages. This makes it easier for Canadian beef to pass strict import inspections in Japan, South Korea, and Singapore markets that value food safety and hormone-free products. For Asian consumers, that means peace of mind without much extra cost. But for Americans, if this trend continues, it could hit domestic prices hard. One supermarket chain in California that used to buy U.S. beef at $6 per pound is now sourcing from Alberta at $7.20 per pound. That price difference gets passed right to you at checkout. American cattle ranchers are under growing pressure. According to the USDA, U.S. beef exports are projected to drop by nearly 10% in 2025, down to roughly 2.6 to 2.7 billion pounds. Meanwhile, imports are expected to rise 12%, topping 5 billion pounds mainly from Australia, New Zealand, and Brazil, losing long-standing markets like Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam means more unsold product at home, and a glut that drives prices down for farmers even as costs keep rising. Processing plants in Texas, Nebraska, and Kansas have cut back operations. Some have shut down temporarily, with hundreds of workers laid off. According to the American Meat Institute, small and mid-sized farms are losing buyers, forced to scale back or sell cattle early just to stay afloat. At the same time, prices at the grocery store keep rising. Ground beef now averages $6.10 per pound, over 10% more than it did at the start of the year, according to Food and Wine. If you used to spend $30 a week on ground beef, you might now be looking at $33 or $34. And while 2025 beef production is expected to hit 26.7 billion pounds, the breeding supply is falling, and feed costs are climbing. Feeder cattle are now priced at $281 per hundredweight, pushing production costs even higher.
They want to break us so they can own us.
Normalization of tariffs will have, I guarantee you, an impact on the Canadian economy. It will have an impact on jobs.
You might still be buying your usual canned beans or cooking oil each week, but within days, their prices could be anything but familiar. A decision from Washington, set to take effect on August 1st, is quietly setting off a price ripple that could hit every American dinner table. Starting August 1st, the U.S. will apply a 35% import tax on nearly all goods from Canada, from food and raw materials to industrial supplies. It's part of a new trade policy aiming to reduce cross-border dependence. But because Canada supplies much of what Americans use every day, this move is likely to shake up businesses and push up prices at the grocery store. Canada currently supplies about 69% of all canola oil used in the U.S. A gallon of canola oil, usually priced at $9, could soon cost $12 or more. For a family that buys 2 gallons a month, that's $6 extra per month or more than $70 a year just for cooking oil. And canned food might also get pricier. Roughly half of the tin plate steel used for canned goods comes from Canada. That means a can of soup currently priced at $3.99 might soon go for $4.79. A noticeable change for those who rely on canned meals for convenience or budget. Breakfast is also in the crosshairs. Canada is a key supplier of oats and grains that go into cereals. Brands like Quaker and Nature's Path have warned about rising costs. A $5.29 cereal box today may climb to $5.99 this fall. An unwelcome jump for families with kids or older folks who count on a quick, easy breakfast. Companies like Kraft Heinz and Goya Foods have already flagged production cost hikes. While there's no need to panic buy, it might be wise to keep an eye on prices. Consider switching to US-made brands, buying in bulk, or hunting for store deals. What seems like a distant policy could add $40 to $50 a month to the average household's grocery bill. Small changes that add up. 2. Kitchen staples at risk. 3 key items are likely to see increases: tin plate, canola oil, and breakfast cereals. These are the building blocks of hundreds of everyday products. Tin plate steel is used in soup cans, soda cans, and even pet food containers. When the cost of materials rises, packaging companies adjust prices fast. A $3.99 soup can may become $4.49, or even $4.79. Soon tough news for anyone living alone or on a fixed income. As for canola oil, most of it comes from Canada. With taxes added, prices are expected to climb above $12 per gallon. So, if you buy 2 gallons a month, expect to pay $6 to $8 more in prepared foods that use canola, like salad dressings or sandwich buns. Will also go up. Cereal lovers, take note. Canadian oats are a staple in U.S. breakfast products. While prices haven't jumped yet, higher import costs mean $5.29 cereal boxes might hit $5.99 soon. That's a real pinch for families juggling food costs already. 3, prices will keep climbing. According to Yale Budget Lab, new 2025 tariffs, including the one on Canada, could increase the cost of living by around 2%, adding about $2,700 per year to the average household budget if no spending changes are made. Food costs at home alone are projected to rise by 2.2%, with fresh produce possibly jumping over 5%. So, that $20 basket of vegetables you bought last week could soon cost $21. Families who adjust their shopping habits choosing local over imports might limit the extra spending to around $2,300 per year. Still, for low-income households where food is already a big part of the budget, that's a major stress. The bigger picture, U.S. GDP could fall by 0.8%, and unemployment may rise by 0.4%, meaning about 594,000 jobs lost by year's end. That's not just theory, it's potential real-world pain for working Americans.
The deal that's currently being negotiated will provide some relief. But in the meantime, what this does is it also ensures that Canada doesn't become a dumping ground for other markets who are also being pushed out of the United States right now.
This wasn't how the trade war was supposed to play out. Just weeks after Washington imposed a 50% tariff on imported steel, Canada slashed its steel exports to the US from 78% down to 68%, redirecting $1 billion Canadian to bolster its own infrastructure and defense. The era of industrial self-reliance has begun, and Detroit is already feeling the heat. You run a small parts shop in Detroit where steel from Canada arrives weekly. After the US imposes a 50% tariff on Canadian steel, shipments slow. Canada cuts steel sent south exports to US drop from 78% to 68% using steel instead for highways, power lines, and defense. The Canadian government invests $1 billion Canadian to favor local steel for big projects. This hits beyond car factories. New car models are delayed. Used car prices rise and buyers hesitate. Assembly line workers, mostly in their 40s and 50s, face cut hours or pink slips. In 3 months, the price of a sedan may rise by $1,500 to $2,000 per vehicle. Trucks and SUVs by $2,500 to $3,000. About 7,000 to 9,000 auto jobs in Detroit and Ohio could be cut or moved to temporary contracts, tightening family budgets. If you have relatives in Canadian steel industry, you've heard the buzz. Our clean steel sells in Europe and Japan, thanks to big investments in electric arc furnaces and low-emission tech. Canadian steel meets strict EU standards, dodging new carbon taxes, slowing others. Meanwhile, US still struggles to reach lower emission targets. American families aren't just seeing a steel shortage. They feel the pinch as prices rise for home projects and repairs. That garage upgrade, new roof, or fence now shocks with high prices. Many delay home improvements, hoping prices drop. In next 3 to 6 months, price of construction steel at US suppliers will rise by $180 to $250 per ton. This means household projects, roof fixes, fences, garages could cost $1,200 to $2,000 more than months ago. Middle-aged families will postpone big repairs or borrow more to do them. A Detroit dealer said, "It has never been this hard to stock new cars." Ford and Stellantis report big rises in production costs from steel shortages and delays. Ohio and Michigan factories cut shifts, delay new models as workers fear job loss. Families with auto paychecks tighten belts, worry about pay cuts, lost overtime, or part-time work. Car upgrades or buying for college kids are on hold. Budgets focus on essentials tuition. Over next 4 to 5 months, average new car price will rise by $1,800 to $2,400 from last year. About 4,000 to 6,000 auto workers in Ohio and Michigan may face fewer hours of layoffs. Typical households need extra $7,120 monthly for repairs and loans. No loud protests, just quiet change. Canada will export steel only to US after domestic needs, especially government defense. It is legal. But US makers seek alternatives as steel supply tightens daily. Washington cannot retaliate, supply chains feel the squeeze. Anyone in US planning build, renovate, invest must pause steel projects. Homes, commercial, delayed, or cost more. Small business owners, contractors, rethink budgets, timelines, careers. Within 6 months, average price new homes in industrial regions may rise by $12,000 to $18,000 due to material costs. Families planning renovations will spend extra $2,500 to $4,000 on steel projects like stairs, roofs, fencing. Many delay work or live with repairs undone.
So this whole Greenland thing is getting kind of out of hand.
When the president on Twitter declared that he would not travel to Denmark in 10 days' time. The reason? Danish leaders wouldn't discuss selling Greenland to the U.S.
It might look like a frozen, faraway land, but Greenland is quietly giving the White House a major headache. President Trump was busy issuing tariff ultimatums. Canada and the European Union stepped into this icy territory not to sightsee, but to mine gold, molybdenum, and rare earth minerals. And believe it or not, those materials are hiding in the phone in your pocket or inside the engines of American airplanes. So what's really going on up in the Arctic, and how can one remote mine in Greenland make Washington break a sweat? Greenland, once offered to be bought by the Trump administration, has now become a hotspot in the global race for minerals. But the U.S. isn't leading this time. In June 2025, Greenland granted a 30-year mining license to Greenland Resources Incorporated. a Canadian company backed by the EU. The Malmberg project is expected to supply around 25% of the European Union's molybdenum, needs a metal essential for producing heat-resistant steel. That's not all. Another Canadian company, Amaroq Minerals Limited, which is listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, raised £45 million in 2025 to expand the Nalunaq Gold Project and develop a new mining hub in western Greenland. All this means the U.S. is slowly being shut out of supply chains for key resources like rare earth elements, molybdenum, and titanium materials it once led the search for. Greenland holds 25 out of 34 critical minerals identified by the EU, and this new direction could reshape how the global market works. Losing first access to Greenland's mineral reserves may cause the cost of technology and defense equipment to go up in the future. For example, if a chip made with molybdenum gets 15% more expensive, then an electric vehicle or military device could cost an extra $200 to $500 just because of raw materials. Greenland isn't chasing short-term profit. Instead, it's setting a long-term roadmap for how its resources get used. Under new government rules, foreign companies must hire local Greenlandic workers and invest directly in community projects like schools, hospitals, roads, and environmental safeguards. That means more of the wealth from Greenland's ground stays within the country rather than getting shipped overseas without any local benefits. As Greenland's Prime Minister said, "We're not selling resources, we're building a future." That's one reason why Greenland is leaning toward partners like Canada and the EU, who are ready to follow these sustainability standards and provide long-term support instead of just looking for quick profits. Because of these stricter requirements, American companies used to a buy mine exit model will need to adjust if they want to compete. That could slow the U.S. down in building a new clean energy supply chain. In the meantime, products like electric car batteries, wind turbines, and energy storage devices could keep seeing high prices for the next 12 to 18 months. Greenland's pivot toward Europe and Canada isn't just symbolic, it's changing the balance of power in the global resource game. With European and Canadian firms gaining control of key mining projects in Greenland like those for molybdenum, gold, and rare earths, the U.S. could find itself locked out of supply lines it once hoped to lead. Take the Malmberg project. For instance, it has the green light to operate through 2055 and is set to provide a quarter of the EU's molybdenum needs. That metal is vital for defense, aerospace, and high-strength alloy manufacturing. The U.S. once looked to Greenland as a key partner to reduce its dependence on China, but now, companies like GE, Raytheon, and Tesla may have to source materials from harder-to-reach places like Brazil or Namibia, where costs and political risks are both higher. You won't feel the impact overnight, but signs are already there. A solar panel that cost $230 earlier this year is now listed at $260 at big retailers like Home Depot, largely because raw material prices are going up. And unless the U.S. finds a new path, that price gap is likely to keep growing.
Auto giant Stellantis says it's already feeling the pain of Donald Trump's trade war. The company behind brands like Jeep, Dodge, Fiat, and Chrysler announced today that it expects to lose nearly $3 billion.
It's a double whammy. Washington holds tight on tariff policy, while Ottawa quietly squeezes supply chains. In the unseen battle between Trump and Carney, American citizens and businesses are taking the full impact. Auto prices are skyrocketing faster than copper, and factory owners in Detroit are racing the clock to avoid production cuts. Is the pressure to negotiate strategy backfiring? And if you're planning to buy a new car or renovate your home, it's time to pay close attention to the forces at play behind the political headlines. In 2025, the U.S. auto industry suffered one of its worst supply shocks since the pandemic. Ford projects a loss of up to $1.5 billion in operating profit this year, while Stellantis, parent of Jeep and Chrysler, reported a $2.7 billion loss in just the first half. The root cause: widespread disruption in parts and raw material supply from Canada. The North American Manufacturing Association reports that roughly 50% of aluminum and steel used in U.S. automobiles comes from Canada. Those components often cross the border multiple times for fabrication, welding, and assembly, meaning even minor border delays can paralyze entire production lines. In states like Michigan and Ohio, consumers are noticing longer wait times and surging prices. A midsize SUV that cost $35,000 in January now lists near $42,000 at many showrooms. It's not just cars feeling the pinch. Raw materials are surging across the board. Copper recently hit $5.72 per pound, its highest point since 2011. Aluminum prices have jumped 161% within the first 7 months of 2025, driving production costs up in industries and consumer goods alike. Auto manufacturers warn that if this continues, the average price of a new vehicle could rise by 20 to 25%, adding around $7,000 per car. Many consumers in industrial states like Illinois and Pennsylvania are delaying vehicle purchases, while companies like Tesla and Rivian raised prices in August. Building materials are also costly on average. A new home now costs $10,900 more, just accounting for steel, aluminum, and lumber. For many U.S. families, home construction plans have been postponed indefinitely. The combination of tariffs and import price increases is hitting American wallets hard. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, real household income could fall by 0.4% if current tariff policies remain through year-end. That small percentage translates to an added $1,300 to $4,900 per year in household spending due to higher import prices. According to Morning Consult surveys, many families are delaying big-ticket purchases like vehicles, electronics, and home renovations. Data from Experian shows personal debt, including credit card balances, is up nearly 7% from last year. Those who once lived hand-to-mouth are turning to credit cards to cover basic needs. A silent, dangerous financial spiral is forming, and credit policies, many experts argue, are accelerating it.
The new spending law changes how Americans pay for education at every level. One provision affects school vouchers with a possible ripple effect on public school funding. Another targets large university endowments, bringing a new tax reality to higher education.
You might get a few $100s back for giving to charity, but you could also lose thousands if your child is aiming for a top university. Trump's new tax law is changing how we fund both education and our communities. The real question is, who stands to benefit and who could be left behind? Starting in 2027, the One Big Beautiful Bill introduces a dollar-for-dollar tax credit up to $1,700 a year for donations to K-12 private school scholarship programs. This replaces the old system of regular deductions. With no federal cap on the total credits available, some experts estimate the government could end up covering as much as $100 billion annually. For families with no children in private school, this means public school funding may take a hit, especially in programs supporting students with disabilities. For example, if a student needs an aide at $20 per hour, budget cuts might reduce that support, directly affecting the classroom learning experience. Also in 2020, universities with large endowments will face higher taxes under the new law. Schools holding more than $750,000 per student in endowment funds will pay a 4% tax. Those with over $2 million per student will pay 8%, a sharp increase from the current 1.4%. However, colleges with fewer than 3,000 tuition-paying students, like Amherst or Wellesley, are exempt no matter how large their endowment. For top universities like Harvard, with an endowment over $50 billion, the new law could cost $200 to $280 million a year, enough to fund hundreds of scholarships or entire research programs. Even schools like Rice University expect to pay more than $10 million annually, roughly the value of 100 full scholarships. To adapt, many universities have started freezing hiring, delaying raises, and slowing student enrollment growth. Families sending students to top-tier schools may notice tighter financial aid, fewer scholarships, and less generous tuition offsets. If you're planning for an Ivy League education, you might need to budget several $1,000s more per year than previous classes did. Beginning in 2026, the law also introduces a charitable deduction for non-itemizers up to $1,000 for individuals and $2,000 for couples. For the first time, over 90% of Americans who use the standard tax form will be eligible for this kind of deduction. That means if you normally give $500 to charity but don't itemize your taxes, you can still reduce your taxable income by $500 and possibly get $50 to $100 back at tax time. It's a practical way to reward everyday generosity. But wealthier donors and businesses face tighter limits. High-income individuals can only deduct up to 35% of their adjusted gross income AGI and must subtract 0.5% AGI from their donation total. For businesses, the reduction is 1% of AGI. Experts estimate this could reduce large-scale charitable giving by about $81 billion over the next decade. If you've noticed major donations from big companies or wealthy individuals to museums, arts programs, or research institutions, those contributions may become less frequent. This could leave some of those organizations needing to pause or revise plans if they cannot find replacement funding.
More Canadians come to America than tourists from any other country. Last year, Canadians made over 20 million visits to the U.S. and spent more than $20 billion here. But this year, many are not coming to America, as I saw firsthand on a recent trip to Vermont, right near the Canadian border.
Canadian visitors didn't say goodbye, they just quietly stopped coming. No more lines of weekend cars at the border. No more cheerful voices at the outlets and cafes. They left behind unused ski passes and a once thriving cross-border friendship that now feels a little strained. Back in 2024, over 20 million Canadian travelers crossed into the U.S., spending close to $19.8 billion. But by 2025, that number is sliding fast. In June alone, cross-border car traffic from Canada dropped 33%, marking the sixth straight month of decline. At a well-known ski resort near the Vermont border, 30 to 35% of seasonal passes from Canadian guests were never renewed. That's 1 out of every 3 visitors gone, and with them, income for local ski instructors, shuttle drivers, and small restaurants. If you've ever strolled through a small town near the border, places like Plattsburgh, NY or Darby Line, VT, you may already notice stores are quieter, cafes closing earlier, or fewer hands behind the counter. For local motel owners and diner staff who rely on guests from Toronto or Montreal, this isn't abstract, it's lost income day after day. The loss of Canadian visitors isn't just a footnote, it's playing out in real time at the register. In Jay-Peak, Vermont, a resort that used to see over 3,000 Canadian season pass holders now has fewer than 1,500 renewals, slashing ticket revenue by more than $1.2 million year over year. Local hotels and eateries have shortened hours or closed 2 days a week just to stay afloat. At the St. Bernard de la Colle duty-free shop, once averaging 400 transactions a day, numbers have dropped to under 200, dragging revenue from over $100,000 per day in 2024 to under $55,000 now. One store owner put it plainly, "We're sitting on double the inventory because nothing's moving." Even Vermont Bruco, a local favorite with a loyal Canadian following, saw second quarter sales drop 38%. The reason? A case of their popular IPA that used to cost 25 Canadian dollars now sells for over 36. Thanks to import taxes, about an $8 hike per case. Many customers have shifted to Canadian brands like Molson or Bose, which are cheaper and untaxed. If you're a bartender, cook, or receptionist near the border, you've probably already felt the change: fewer shifts, fewer tips, and too many empty tables where Canadian guests used to sit. With cross-border travel in retreat, towns across the northern U.S. are stepping up efforts to reconnect with their neighbors to the north. In downtown Burlington, Vermont, the popular Church Street was temporarily renamed Canada Street for the month of July. Store signs, banners, and even menus now include French translations as a warm welcome. Shops like Maple Lane Boutique and diners like North Shore Diner are offering at par pricing, meaning Canadians can pay in Canadian dollars at a one exchange rate. That can save travelers 7% to 10% on purchases enough to turn a $50 lunch from nearly 70 Canadian dollars back down to face value. There's also a new initiative called Free Canada Day, rolling out in towns from New York to Michigan, offering free admission to local attractions, lodging discounts, and special perks for Canadians visiting on July 1st, their national holiday. Some hotels even promote deals like buy 2 nights, get 1 free for Canadians, a savings of $200 to $300 per trip. These gestures are more than symbolic. For many border towns that depend on Canadian travelers, from gas stations and grocery stores to motels and roadside diners, this is a matter of survival. If Canadian guests keep staying away, the winter ahead could be a tough one.